today. You may have gotten a notification this meeting is going to be recorded. So you're welcome to leave your video on, take your video off, and we'll share this with captions after the call. These calls are co-hosted by Dryad and eLife and FORCE11 as a way for us to share information around open source and connect communities and projects with each other. So really excited to have such a great slate of projects here today and so many people joining the call. And so I want to go through the agenda and our code of conduct around these calls. Oops. So the agenda is here. We're going to be taking the notes here. So for each presenter is a little information about the presenter, a link to the slides, and we'll take notes in those sections about those particular calls. And then this meeting is governed by our code of conduct. So that's the meeting and the notes as well. And I haven't yet introduced myself. I'm Tracy Teal. I'm the Executive Director of Dryad, and I'll be the facilitator for this meeting. John Chodacki is here on the call as well. He works at the California Digital Library, and he works with Dryad and is on the board of FORCE11, and he will be a moderator, co-facilitator as well. So you can chat each of us individually as well if you have any questions or comments or concerns. So for questions, we're going to use the chat. So if you see in the chat, see if I can get to my chat here. Yeah, it takes it away. Okay, so if you go to the chat, and you type in the chat, if you have a question for one of the speakers, type hand there. I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat, and so I'll see the order that these come in, and I'll call on people in that order. If you would prefer to not ask your own question, but instead have me ask the question, you can write hand and the question. For instance, you know, hand, when did your organization start? And I can ask that question for you as well. So you can see too, we're trying to use the captions that go along with Google Slides. So they're not perfect, but to provide some text as well as the speaking of the speakers, and then when we'll share the recordings, those will have their captions. So on to who is presenting. So we have such a fantastic group today, and the thing that we're really excited about is that we're focusing on community here. So a real key in open source projects, we talk about the software and the technology, but something that really distinguishes open source projects is their communities and the way that communities work and coordinate with each other to both develop products and use the products as well. So we have a great group here that's talking some about the tools, but also about the communities that help support learning and working with these tools. So these speakers are all just have so much experience in this space and are doing such great work. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. I really appreciate everyone taking their time to be here with us. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I will introduce our first speaker. So our first speaker is Cher Hurt, and she is with the Carpentries. I'll hand it over to you, Cher.
All right, I'm excited. So I can start sharing my screen now, boss lady? I mean, Tracy?
Yeah. Yes, go ahead and share your screen. I used to work with the Carpentries.
Yeah, she was boss lady. I still call her boss lady. Okay, and you can see my slides. All right, see a thumbs up. Let me do our closed captioning. It's working. Okay. And here we go. Hey. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I am Cher Hurt. I am the Deputy Director of Workshops and Meetings for the Carpentries, and I am excited to be here, a part of the Dryad Open Source Community Call today. I'm going to talk to you about three things: best practices for software development and research that makes for good software development and data analysis, the organization I love working with and for, and how you can get involved if I say something that you might like. Here in the Carpentries, we've been gathering information and identify the best practices and teach these practices in our workshops. And when you think about software, all the steps that are required to complete a task, I truly believe that after 2 to 3 times of repeating that task, it's time to automate. And so here in the Carpentries, we actually show you how to use programming languages like R, Python, or the command line to automate those repetitive tasks, in addition to how to transform those workflows into scripts and functions. And not only that, we truly believe in not working alone. So we show you how to collaborate. You may have a neighbor that is 3 countries over who may want to contribute to your script or function. And so we show you how to use version control for that. And then when you look at data analysis and research, we like to show you, one, how to keep that raw data raw, but also using that raw data to repeat those analyses. You think about when you get that raw data, it may have all these lines of repetitive data. You need to clean it up. We show you how to clean up that data from start to finish, how to organize that data, how to use programming languages to make your data more efficient, and how to reuse that code. In order to do all those things, you need to attend a Carpentries workshop. And I like to tell you, our Carpentries workshop, we have library carpentry, data carpentry, and software carpentry. I like to focus on what all of them offer. All of them are geared toward the novice learner. They don't have to have any prior knowledge. Generally, they're taught in person for 2 days, but we'll talk about that. All of our instructors are trained by our instructor trainers, and they all address gaps in computational research. All of our workshops are accessible. They use open source code. They follow a code of conduct. They're approachable. We like to incorporate a friendly learning environment, and we really focus on meeting the learners where they are. They're active. They're participatory, live coding with trained instructors. So the learner is live coding alongside with the instructor. Now, I said that they were 2 days, generally online and in person. Well, that's not so anymore due to the pandemic. We have fully transitioned to online technical workshops. Now, our goal with our online workshop is to provide the same in-person experience, but virtually. So with that, we have developed recommendations for teaching carpentries online. We have introduced new roles for our instructors to get more experience. And we've also developed a 3-hour bonus module for our instructors to get additional training to be able to feel comfortable with teaching online. Now, our instructors are credible. And I'm not saying that just because I work for the Carpentries. Our instructors are taught by 2 certified Carpentries instructors, instructor trainers. The trainings are online and or in person, and they're 2 days of active learning. When you think about TAs and researchers, most times they have not been properly taught how to teach workshops. So while in our instructor training, we do teach, we do focus on the content, but we really want to make sure that our instructors are comfortable with providing feedback, with understanding the background of their audience, to be able to empower those learners to feel as though that they can do everything that the instructor is teaching them outside of the classroom when the instructor is no longer in front of them. So we've talked about, what we do in our workshops, but now let me tell you about this awesome organization that I work for, the Carpentries. We have 85 member organizations, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But here in the Carpentries, we are a nonprofit, fiscally sponsored project of community initiatives, and our vision is to be the leading inclusive community teaching data and coding skills. And because of that, we've been able to train over 2,800 instructors who have taught over 2,800 workshops globally on all 7 continents. We've done workshops in over 61 countries, and we have reached over 70,000 learners. Now that's a lot. I'd like you to know that the work that we've done is driven by our community, and it's done by our core team. We have a small team of 13 persons, but we have a global impact, and we are represented in North America, Europe, and Africa. Now, if I've said anything to spark your interest, I'd encourage you to become a member organization. And that's an organization which has made a commitment to the growth and spread of the Carpentries. They receive priority access to instructor training and help with capacity building. And I'd like to let you know, our revenue is mostly generated from memberships from organizations like yours, and they ensure ongoing development and maintenance of lessons demanded by research communities. Now, I've only shared one way for you to get involved with the Carpentries, but there are a plethora of ways for you to be a member of our community. And I'd love for you to be a part of our community because you belong in the Carpentries. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cher. Great to see everything that's going on, and especially appreciate the pivot to online workshops has really been a big shift, and there's a lot of great resources on hosting online meetings that are available for everybody. Are there any questions that people have for Cher? Great. Kaveh, do you want to ask your question, or you want me to ask it?
I'll ask it. Hi, this is Kaveh.
Perfect.
Thank you for that. Just a quick question. If someone comes to you and says, I really love to program because all my friends program and I don't, but I have absolutely no idea what programming is, what program do you recommend? What is there something you recommend to them just to get them started?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I tell them to take a look at our software carpentry if they're looking at programming. And really, I'd like to get a little bit more about their audience, and that would dictate which programming language in our software carpentry workshops. They're going to learn three things particularly. They'll look at version control, they'll look at the command line, and then they'll look at learning the language. And that language is dependent upon your audience.
Thank you.
Carrie, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to add on to Cher's answer and take a step back to ask what problem the individual wants to solve as well. Sometimes with programming, especially now that it seems any and everybody has to know how to program, sometimes it's easy to just say, okay, maybe I should learn R, but I would also take a step back and think about what problem am I trying to solve, and then consider what tools would be helpful in solving that specific problem. It could be OpenRefine, it could be R, it could be something else. So that's another thing that I would do, is kind of take a step back and consider what problem you're trying to solve, and then look at the programming languages that could help you solve that problem. And joining any of our communication channels, we can help you brainstorm where you should start with programming from there.
Yep. Thanks for that. And maybe Carrie, you could add in the link to the Slack channel in the notes document here. That's a great place. I think we're really emphasizing community, and a lot of our communities will talk about places where the communities talk with each other and really being welcoming and inclusive. So they're great places to ask questions. And there's lots of representatives from all the different communities that we'll be hearing from today on this call. So it's great to see that participation. Are there any other questions for Cher? All right, thank you so much for that presentation. And this leads really well to our next presentation, which will be from Laura Asian with MetaDocencia. So Laura, why don't you go ahead and share your screen, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Cher, to introducing the Carpentries so well. It's going to be so much easier for me now. So I will be sharing my screen. Can you see it? Can you see my Google Slides?
Yes, looks good.
Thank you for the thumbs up. And okay, turning my captions. Okay, here we go. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation, Tracy. I am Laura Sion, and I am happy to participate of this community call to present MetaDocencia. In Spanish, MetaDocencia means meta teaching. MetaDocencia is an initiative that teaches to teach in Spanish. This is MetaDocencia Twitter handle, in case you want to live tweet this presentation. Last mid-March, with the need to switch every class from in-person to online in Argentina, where we don't know when in-person classes will resume yet, these friends of mine with whom we have been working in the art community and I co-founded MetaDocencia. Our mission is to nurture a community of Spanish-speaking educators by teaching concrete, evidence-based, and student-centered educational methods. We collaboratively develop open, reusable, and accessible resources to foster effective training practices. In case you didn't notice yet, we are heavily inspired in the Carpentries. You may be wondering why there is a need for MetaDocencia when the Carpentries already exist. Carpentries is majorly an English-speaking community, and English is an enormous barrier in Latin America. Translations of contents are not enough for culturally responsible teaching. Meeting our learners where they are in Latin America means to not make assumptions about the knowledge of technologies such as Zoom, Slack, or Google Docs, and being conscious about internet access and accessibility differences. There is a ton of terrain leveling work needed before meaningful international integration is feasible here. Communities of practice are still a new concept in our region. In mid-March, the need for all we have learned from the Carpentries was more evident than ever. We had the knowledge, the experience, and the moral obligation to share it ASAP. 6 months later, our core team of Carpentries or RStudio certified trainers and instructors added Nicolas, another Carpentries trainer and instructor. Our collaborators team now includes 10 collaborators in 3 countries and 6 different cities in Argentina. They are RStudio certified instructors, recently certified Carpentries instructors, and are regionally knowledgeable accessibility experts. We are also blessed by an international advisory team that is guiding us. Among various activities, we have taught our 3-hour hands-on workshop, Introduction to Teaching Online, over 30 times. We completed a Carpentries instructor training for 19 participants, 18 of them already completed with checkout. We are piloting a 2-hour hands-on workshop about how to use Zoom to teach online. This is the most common request from our participants. Also, a 3-hour workshop for creating interactive tutorials to teach to code with R using the R package learner. We've reached more than 1,200 Spanish-speaking teachers across 19 countries. We have reached educators from all over Argentina, including underserved rural areas. Our learners teach mostly exact and natural sciences, but also other disciplines. We foster a community through a 100% Spanish-speaking Slack workspace, where we apologize when sharing materials in English. It includes more than 300 members. We are also active tweets and asynchronous content creators. In the upcoming month, we will keep thinking globally while acting locally, considering the different realities of Latin American, Spanish-speaking, open source educators. However, one lesson we learned is that MetaDocencia will not be sustainable on volunteer time for too much longer. Thus, we are actively looking for funding. We also plan to keep developing workshops to teach how to teach programming, Python, R, Git, and other open source and open data science must-haves. We also plan to measure our impact and publish our experience openly. All of our activities were possible thanks to our team's volunteer time and a $1,000 grant from the Open Bioinformatics Foundation that supports our Zoom, Calendly, and other infrastructure. In this link here, you can find more information about MetaDocencia. Thank you for your attention. So what questions do you have?
Thanks so much, Laura. That's really great to hear. And I think that one thing that this really highlights is that the success of one community is often other communities, and really embracing this idea of meeting learners where they are is so important. So it's great to hear how these communities are really complementing and supporting and learning from each other.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah, I mean, we would have not have done any of this without the Carpentries. So thank you for all the people from the Carpentries that are here today. We really appreciate all your work.
We appreciate everything that you're doing. Are there any questions? Carrie.
This is fascinating. I'm just like, okay, I want to know how to donate actually. So I'm on the website and I'm wondering, is there currently an infrastructure that for accepting donations, or is it in the works, or can you share more about that?
That's a wonderful question, Carrie. Thank you very much. Well, we are working on looking for a fiscal sponsorship for being able to receive. We are learning the hard way how this works. We didn't start this thinking of the money. We don't charge for our work. I mean, everything is free, everything is open, and we put our time, and that's it. Well, then we found out we needed to pay for Zoom, and then we found that money from the LBF, and we are working on seeking for sponsorship. We are learning. Our advisory team has been awesome, and thank you, Kate, you're here today. Kate, her work has been helping us through this process, learning, and we are looking into being fiscally sponsored, and hopefully that will allow us to receive donations. And we are also applying for grants, so that's another way. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, great question. And I think that it is a really good question that highlights the opportunities and challenges in community work, is that it does require infrastructure and support. And sometimes we think about them as really people working together, but there's really that core functionality that supports the community, so builds the pathways and processes for people to engage. So I think we don't always see that side of things. I think that'd be a great other call to talk about some of that. But that's another place where projects and communities can support each other, is sharing, what they learned about those processes. So if you want to be in touch with Laura about anything there, please do. I think that she and the advisory board are probably always happy to talk. I see Kate nodding as well. All right, so we are going to move on to our next speaker, who's Arfan Smith with the Journal of Open Source Software.
Thanks, Tracy. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, great.
Good, thank you. All right, thanks for confirming. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm afraid I failed on the Google slide experiment earlier today, so I do not have captions. I apologize. I'm presenting from Keynote. So today I'd like to tell you about the Journal of Open Source Software. This is a project that a few of us started about 4 years ago, including Tracy, in fact, to basically work out how we could do community peer review of software and provide a mechanism for career credit for people writing software as part of their academic contribution. And so this list of people here is the list of editors, former and present, and there's we've been going about 4 years, and we published about 1,000 papers now. Okay, so as I said, the kind of primary goal of the journal really is to provide a way to give credit for people writing software. There's not enough time to talk about this today, really, but there isn't really, routinely people who write software often don't get credit for this in academic circles. And so when you think about trying to solve this problem, there's sort of 2 ways you can think about that. Try and fit software into the current kind of credit system that we work within, or evolve beyond this sort of credit model that's based on papers. The latter one is very hard. So we basically just said, well, what if we just wrote papers about software and did review in the sort of cheapest, best way possible online? And that's what we ended up doing. So one of the nice things about papers is that they're easy to cite. Everyone sort of knows how to cite papers. We don't need to change anything about the existing scholarly infrastructure to make this work. And we also don't need to, we can publish in existing journals. We don't have to necessarily launch new journals, but if we do, citation just kind of works between them. Paper writing is not zero work, especially when you've written a bunch of software already. Lots of journals don't accept papers. Typically, there's a bunch of issues that we see with software papers, and JOS was designed to address many of these. So kind of just in summary, the idea was to sort of embrace this hack that software papers are a way for people to get credit. Let's make it as easy as possible. So the sort of tagline for the journal is a developer-friendly journal for research software. And that means that we have a very fast submission process. The review is actually mostly about the software with community reviewers who volunteered their time. And again, the primary goal is to give people credit for their work. This is just a little bit of sort of demonstration of the number of submissions that we've reviewed and published over the past 5 years. So we're growing pretty fast. We have about 50 editors today. One of the kind of novel parts of what we do is we also have this robot called Whedon, which is there and is part of the editorial experience. So it's a sort of a bot-assisted experience. And this is a thread here showing one of our editors-in-chief, Lorena Barber, who some of you will know, basically interacting with the robot, interacting with the reviewers, interacting with the authors, all in a GitHub issue in a review thread. So just some observations about sort of how the project works and how we feel like we're doing right now. In terms of at some level, we feel like the journal's working. We're meeting a demand of the community. People seem to enjoy editing and reviewing and being reviewed in the journal, which I think is kind of a novel experience that given some of my experiences with traditional journals. The other thing that's kind of come out of this is that when the journal works best, everybody learns from each other. So reviewers teach the authors something. Authors often are, exposing the reviewers to new software that they've never come across before. So when it really works, it's a pretty collaborative experience for all involved. And so this is sort of one of the things that we didn't really design for it. So I would say it's more an emergent property of the journal. And Whedon is occasionally confusing to people. They don't realize this is not a human, but it's generally quite a celebrated part of the experience. Just wrapping up, the problems that we're really experiencing today as a community, I think, are about scaling people processes. I think lots of communities face these challenges, and we're working actively on those. I think some of the unexpected consequences of working openly in review is that, we sometimes have these kind of, we've had people who are a little bit annoyed about not being asked to review sometimes because everyone can see all the submissions coming in. This is a generally novel experience for editorial teams. We also like the fact that there's sort of no privileged information in the system. This is, adds some nice effects about transparency, editorial decisions happening in the open, that kind of thing. And we're also aware that there's some sort of not so awesome parts about working openly. So it, can contribute to reviewer burnout. We're also, sensitive to the fact that there are, I think, real cultural barriers to some people for participating in an open review process, and that's the problem that we recognize. So I guess the last thing I'd want to say is just to wrap up is that, we think of JOS as sort of a collaboration between authors, editors, reviewers, and we would thank all the people that have helped us get to where we have today. So I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Arfan, and thanks for pointing out the strengths of community and some of the challenges as well. And I think that's something I really have appreciated about JOS, though, is that the editors and the reviewers, everyone appreciates the process, the really collaborative approach. There's no like reviewer number 3 dynamic. Right. And I think that has been an amazing outcome of JOS, and is a testament to how it was set up at the start of thinking about the community interactions and creating an inclusive reviewing process and continuing to work towards improving that. So
Right.
thanks for the work there. And Carrie had a question.
So is familiarity with GitHub a requirement for the review process? I mean, no, except people become pretty familiar with at least one GitHub issue in the process of going through the review. So it's not possible to participate in the review process without commenting in the thread. And so I guess, but many of our reviewers especially, and authors actually, are often quite new to GitHub. Sometimes it's their first experience of using the platform.
Thanks. And there's good onboarding for reviewers as well. So it is apparently there's, a lot of reviewers, but it is a good thing to think about and look at onboarding as well. Kevin has a question. So he asked, any ideas about including Castor credit system for credit?
Is there, so I'm aware a little bit of the credit, like better credit models. Is this an actual implementation, or is this just thinking about contributor roles and that kind of thing? Could you sort of say a little bit more about what you mean?
Hi. Sorry, I don't want to hog all the questions, but credit is the most important thing in writing papers and software, etc. That's what academics like. So Castor credit gives you a kind of granular way of saying who did what in a multi-author environment. Now,
yes,
your particular software, but I'm thinking aloud that it would be nice if I were a co-author and I did all the programming, somehow, I get that credit. I really don't know what my question is, but you're nodding.
I can answer. I can tell you what. I think we are considering this. One of the challenges actually with a journal that explicitly publishes software is that authorship is more challenging than many journals. Because, if I'm the PI and I wrote the grant, am I an author? If I didn't touch the code, I think you are probably, but that's not obvious if you look at like the Git log and look at who wrote the code. So we generally try and dodge policing authorship. We ask, it's part of our review process, we ask the reviewers to check that the reviewer list looks reasonable and complete, I think is our phrasing. And that often actually raises really good questions by the reviewers. They'll say, this person has not touched the code, yet they're an author, what's going on? And it's usually a very quick kind of turnaround. Oh, actually, this person was sitting next to me and we talked a lot about the software, they're a co-I or something, but it is, contributor roles is one way around this. If we were to capture that information, I think credit potentially could help us there, because I think the software especially kind of points to the challenge of the traces of your work. If you're just looking at commits in a repository, for example, often do a poor job of representing all the people who've been involved in a project. And that's true of lots of research, of course, but software especially kind of pokes holes in the credit model, I think, quite routinely.
Yeah, thanks for that question. And there's a lot of contributors, documentation, community organization that goes into software. So it's great that all of those authors can be included and get credit. All right, thanks so much, Arfan. We're going to move on to our next presenter, Sarah from OpenCIDER.
Hi, everybody. And I will share my screen and okay, and I'm gonna turn on the subtitles or closed captions. So I hope it's working. And okay, so thank you so much for having me here, and super happy to be presenting OpenCIDER. And OpenCIDER stands for Open Computational Inclusion and Digital Equity Resource. And briefly, I am Sarah, and by day, I'm a research data manager team leader. I'm based in Berlin, and I work with my wonderful co-founder, Nazifa. I'm not sure if she's currently on the call, but yeah, she's a computational biologist and based in Sweden. So what is OpenCIDER and what is our vision in what we're currently doing? So OpenCIDER, the main aim is to create a valuable resource that allows for effective knowledge transfer and to build inclusive communities. And that's important to drive the participation and increase the diversity in open data, open research, and innovation. And so more closely, what we actually look at is how open data practices and challenges are in restricted resources environments, such as in low middle income countries. And we look into devising strategies to increase participation from these environments or from these areas in open data. And we also, at the same time, address the role of high-income countries in enhancing the diversity in open data. And we look very closely into all the wonderful work that Carpentries does, and we monitor it closely, and we learn from it, and we see how we can adapt it and basically increase it for different fields and for those who are interested. And we believe that capacity building is an important factor to onboard people into open data. And from there on, we can talk about open data challenges by increasing the data digital skills or in different areas, you're increasing bringing those people into that area, into open data field, and bringing diversity in open data discussions. So we do this by collecting and highlighting strategies in knowledge disseminations. And again, I'm looking at the Carpentries, but we're also looking at people and communities that are actively doing impressive work in highlighting their work, and we believe in the importance of representation. So we put them forward, or we just offer a platform, right? We don't talk on anyone's behalf, but we're trying to actively seek out people who are doing amazing works. And I'm looking at MetaDocencia. I'm so sorry for the pronunciation, but that was a beautiful example of the kind of things that we, or initiatives and individuals or projects that we look at and highlight and try to create guidelines and for others to adopt similar models. And another thing that we do is establish communication channels to raise awareness, because oftentimes you have resources that are available and freely available, but it's just that they're not very known or popular in other areas, and that's what we're trying to do. So basically, OpenCIDER acts as a one-stop shop, or for someone who's starting from scratch or want to get more support. We're trying to be the first portal to address such questions as, for instance, this tool doesn't work on my platform. What kind of alternatives do I have? Or that tool is blocked or in my country, or I don't have, I can't use it due to licenses, I can't afford it. So what kind of alternatives do I have, and where do I find more information? And this is important, and I'll come to it later. And also we talk about like how to design universal design, not just accommodating design, but designing universally for access for everybody. So inclusive design that is universal, that doesn't rely on internet or specific resources. And we find these in guidelines, and what I said is that we refer to other resources, so people come hopefully to OpenCIDER with a question in mind, to have a quick overview, to have a launching pad, and to get quick answers. And if they want to delve in a bit more to get more information, we have other resources that we link to, because we cannot be specialists in everything. When we talk about open data, we're talking about open source software, we're talking about multitude of things that so, and open hardware, open content, open access. So again, to address these on its own is a very deep field. So what we offer is an overview to give an idea and a direction where to go next, right? And you can see this in what we do in terms of quick guidelines. We have templates, checklists, resources, survey to try to actually actively collect and engage with different communities and collect the data and to learn about the practices in the challenges. And importantly, we rely on community outreach. And as I said, we want to offer a platform to learn from people who are doing good work, who can showcase how their models can be adapted for different uses and for different environments. And this is very important because oftentimes one issue is overarching and it's similar whether it's in Latin America or if it's in Africa, for example, access to internet or reliance or on electricity. So I've heard about the term of rolling blackouts for the first time in my life, talking with someone based in South Africa. So this is the kind of issues that we need to be aware of and bring to the fore for the role of high-income countries to take into account and adjust and adapt to really increase in the diversity and work actively into bringing everybody to the same discussion table. So we, as I said, community building, highlighting efforts, learning and gathering information and creating guidelines are big part of what we do. And if you feel that you'd like to showcase your work, or if you know someone, please do get in touch. And we have, and again, since this is a community or this is an initiative driven thing, so both me and Nazifa, we have like full-time 100% day jobs, and this is on our own time and volunteering time. We would really appreciate any help. If it's fixing a typo or contributing with answering one of the questions, please do let us know, or just driving discussions. So engaging in discussions, that's how we learn. And thank you so much. So have a look at the website and yeah, get in touch and sign up to our next newsletter if you're interested in learning how to teach basic Python on WhatsApp. So thank you so much for everybody who supported us, and special thanks to the Carpentries and to my co-founder who's done amazing work, and to Emmy Tseng from eLife, former eLife. Without eLife Open Leadership Program, OpenCIDER wouldn't be here. So that's with their help and support, that's how it happened, how it came to fruition. So yeah, stay in touch, and thank you all so much. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thanks so much, Sarah. And this is a great example of a community helping to connect other communities and resources. And as they're starting a project, you know, any project has a community element. So this is a great set of resources. We are getting a little low on time. I want to get through the next projects. So these are great questions here. And maybe Sarah, you could answer Carrie's question here in the chat, and John is putting in the contact information for OpenCIDER. So thank you so much.
So
all
if
right.
one of the project, oh, sorry,
Yeah,
am I?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's fine.
But we'll follow up here in the chat. I'm going to hand it over to Mackenzie to talk about DeepLabCuts.
Great. Thank you, Tracy, first of all, for having me. This is very fun, and I mean, amazing presentations already. This is super inspiring to see all the work that's been going on. So I'm Mackenzie Mathis, and along with Alexander Mathis, we started a software package called DeepLabCuts, which is a domain-specific software that allows users to track key points of different animals or objects or anything they're interested in their science using open source software and trying to bring the latest deep learning technology to the hands of the masses. And so as you might imagine, this also has some challenges about a lot of hardware and other things, but in general, we're focused on the software side. Just to give you a sense of, let's make sure this plays, okay. To give you a sense of what I actually mean by this, so whether or not you have old videos of Edward Muybridge, or you might have a mouse or a human dancing or a horse, we provide you a toolkit to make end-to-end trained deep neural networks of whatever you want to track. So essentially, if you can see it, our software allows you to track it. And the general workflow is what we call sort of software 2.0 integration. So we have a full pipeline that allows you to go from your video, your input images, and have complete pipeline management.
Mackenzie, I don't know if you wanted to share slides, but you're not sharing a screen.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah,
That's
that would
okay.
be, oh yeah, obviously.
It was working without slides, but I thought you might have some.
No, let me definitely do that. That is PI fail here. That's great. Okay, let's try this again. Why is it not showing up? Okay, so let me go back. All right. All right, well, now hopefully you can see
now
my
we can
slides.
see them. Perfect.
Okay, great, excellent. Sorry about that, Tracy. Good. Good.
Thanks, Julie.
In general, all I was saying was actually is totally fine. So let's see. In general, what I was suggesting is that we allow you to essentially track whatever you would like to track. Namely, if you have mice in the laboratory, or maybe humans or horses from an old Edward Muybridge video, we allow you to train deep neural networks end to end such that you can essentially capture these key points or the posture of these objects or animals. We've taken a sort of software 2.0 approach. Namely, we've built a full pipeline to allow you to actually build projects and maintain them, transfer them around, use open source resources like Google Colab, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in general, the idea is that you can create a project, you take your input images, and you can annotate just a few frames. This is a supervised learning algorithm. Here's some mouse hands from my laboratory. I'm also an academic. And the idea is that we've been able to sort of harness deep learning by taking pre-trained neural networks on really massive data sets and then allow you to essentially fine-tune them to your problem of choice. So this is really, sort of an hour's worth of work. You can pick deep neural networks. This is, of course, built on a lot of computer vision innovation and open source software. You can evaluate performance. If it's not good enough, you can refine your networks, and then you can run inference on new videos. So namely an unseen mouse in a probably similar type of setting. And so we really see ourselves embedded as a domain-specific software, but in this whole open source ecosystem. So we're built on the Python OpenStack, so many of the tools that you're very familiar with, and hopefully many of our users learn from many of you that were just talking, like the Carpentries, and we point to your resources on our website as well. We try to take insights from computer vision and also do that type of research in our own laboratories to really push to make sure that you're getting state-of-the-art performance. We have an ecosystem which sort of allows you very easily to use, of course, all the open source code on GitHub, integrate this with Google Colab or Google Drive to sort of iteratively test these models, even if you don't have access to expensive hardware. Provide additional resources to if you want to scale these things up, namely on Amazon Web Services or using Docker containers. And then there's a lot of domain-specific software that has come out of the, the outputs of DeepLabCut, of course, are these key points of the posture of the animal. But in neuroscience, which is the space that we work in, we have now relationships with other software that have built on this to do essentially like real-time tracking. And then many other tools have come out to essentially anything from the R ecosystem to Python to MATLAB, and many other papers and tools now that are coming out that are using the outputs of our toolkits, which is very exciting. But in general, we really wanted to take this approach of, as I mentioned, like bringing deep learning more to the masses and making sure that we provide a really good user interface, because most neuroscientists are not deep learning experts. And frankly, neither were we when we started this. And so we really wanted to make code like very flexible and modular. Of course, it's fully open source. We try to do some internal development, but most of it is external on GitHub. We have lots of forks, so potential contributors, and we've already had more than 45. And we're a really young project. We've only been around for about 2 years, and we've already had quite a number of downloads. And yeah, we've tried to provide different ways the users can engage with the code, namely through the command line, through Docker terminals and more advanced modes, but also we provide our own graphical user interface, so people can really do this without having to code at all if they want, although we strongly encourage them to be able to manipulate the code in their best ways. through things like the Carpentries. Okay, everything is online, so we've really gone through and tried to do an extensive job on documentation. There's a lot of YouTube video tutorials. We also used to host in-person workshops, but of course this year hit. And so we've also transferred this fully online. So now we have the DLC course that is not just domain specific just to us, but we also try to include things like, you know, what are deep neural networks and trying to understand the underlying principles of the code. And I'd also like to thank Chan Zuckerberg Initiative for being our first and only funding for this project. And so we're really grateful for how much we've been able to grow in the past year with their support. And with that, now that you've seen my slides, I'm happy to take any questions if there's time.
Thanks so much, Mackenzie. Yeah, I looked at this project in advance of this meeting. The documentation and resources are really fantastic.
Thank you so much.
It's great to see that really complementing the great software work here too.
Thank you.
So definitely would encourage you to take a look at this and the kind of resources they put together.
Thank you.
All right, I will hand it off to Lou Woodley, who is our last speaker from the CSCCE. And I asked her to speak last, but because she is a community organization about communities. So I think we've seen a lot of kind of some of the meta points here already. So I'll hand it over to you, Lou. Oh, you were sharing your screen and then it went away.
Awesome,
Perfect.
and now back again. So hello everybody, and thanks very much Tracy for the invitation to present today. So I'm Lou Woodley, I'm Director of the Centre for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement, or CSCCE for short. And CSCCE is primarily concerned with the role of community managers in STEM. And we think of community managers as anybody who is building, nurturing, stewarding, shepherding a community in science. So community manager might be your full-time role, that might be your job title. I know there's a few of those on the call today, but it might also be something that you're doing in addition to another role, and that's okay too. It might even be something that you're doing as a volunteer responsibility. Doesn't matter what configuration your community building role takes, we're interested in supporting you. So why communities? Why do communities matter so much? So we've heard from all of the other speakers on this call today about how they're working with communities in their work, and community is really important because it's how we get to shape culture together. It's how we get to do culture change, which is at the core of many of these projects. It's how we get to set new norms, and it's how we get to co-create new knowledge together. It's in working together in a community that we're able to create something together that we couldn't have done on our own. So community is absolutely vital for realizing a lot of the potential culture change that we would like to see in the world. And community managers are really important for healthy, productive STEM communities. So what do we mean by that? I mean, health is, it's often the community manager that is thinking about issues of diversity, equity and inclusion, of brokering trust, and of designing inclusive programming to make sure that all members who want to contribute are able to take part in the community work. And community managers help to ensure that communities are productive by ensuring that members align and continue to realign around the shared goals of the things it is that they want to do together within that community. So this stuff doesn't just generally happen spontaneously. It works best when it is shepherded by somebody or a team of folks who help ensuring that the community stays on track and continues to grow. And so community managers are vital, but where do those community managers go to for support? Often folks in these roles don't have any formal training in community building, and they've got lots of questions along the way. Community management work is often very iterative. There's often things that crop up and we need to course correct. Where do you go to ask questions and get support in that work? And that's exactly what CSCCE is for. So we convene a meta community, a community of community managers. So we now have over 200 of those community managers in our community of practice on Slack. And we put together a range of programming in partnership with our community members to tackle the kinds of questions that community managers are facing on a regular basis. Now, rather than run through a list of all the various different things that we do at CSCCE, what I'd like to do now with my remaining minutes is walk you through 3 questions that we get asked quite regularly, especially at the moment, and to point you to some resources that we've created in collaboration with our community members that might help you answer those questions if they're ones that you're facing at the moment too. So the first question that I'm sure we're all thinking about a lot at the moment is, how do I make virtual meetings more interesting, right? We're all sitting on Zoom calls for multiple hours a day. And one of the ways that we set about tackling this is that we co-authored a guide to virtual events with members of our community of practice. So rather than just sitting in those standard Zoom meetings where everyone's looking at one another on video, there are lots of other things that we could obviously be doing together. So from virtual coffee chats to icebreakers, community calls, all the way through to collaborative sprints where we create and build stuff together. And so different community managers from our community of practice each authored a different section of this. We then come up with 12 different virtual event format recipes that you can use to learn from folks that have tried and tested these out in the wild to put those kinds of events on yourself. And this book now has almost 6,000 downloads. So if you've not yet seen it, do go and check it out. It seems to be useful. This is just part 1 of a larger project. So this is just one section of a larger guidebook that we're putting together. So do keep an eye out as well for additional worksheets, curation of other resources around virtual events. The second question that we're getting asked a lot at the moment is, okay, Zoom's all right for kind of online meetings, but if we want to do something a bit extra in these meetings, are there additional tools that we should be using to supplement the work that we do together? And again, who better to ask to answer that question than other community managers who have tried these things? So every Thursday at the moment, we're meeting with members of our community of practice to try out various different tools. So we pick a tool, or we pick a suite of related tools each week, and then we spend an hour or less kicking them around and thinking about various different ways that they might be useful for community building. We take notes in a shared doc, and then we write those up and put the write-up up on the CSCCE blog. So if you're not able to be there in person, you can come and check out the archives of those discussions. So anybody is welcome to come along and join those tools trials on a Thursday. And then finally, a question that we often get asked in many different guises is, how do I align our community activities with our goals? And sometimes this means, help, my community's gotten stuck. It doesn't seem to be kind of doing much anymore. And what can I do in terms of programming, in terms of supportive communications to help to move things along? And we've recently produced a community participation model. This is authored by staff at CSCCE, which describes 4 modes of member engagement within communities and 1 meta mode that happens outside communities that can really help you think a bit more strategically about what's going on in terms of what kinds of behaviours and engagement your programming might be supporting. And this was something we discussed in August community call. So if you want to dive a little deeper in this, we had community members report back from how this model has been used in professional associations and also how it's been used in research collaborations in science as well. And again, all of this is written up. The videos are also available on our YouTube channel. So if these have piqued your interest, then there's plenty more to explore. So I mentioned that we meet in a group on Slack. You're very welcome to request to join that group. We also have community calls every month. So the third Wednesday of every month, we meet for those calls. Again, all are welcome to join those. And then we have a set of curated resource pages on our website. So we pick a particular theme, such as organizing community events, and we pull together the various blog posts, guidebooks, and resources that we and our community members have produced so that you don't have to go trawling through the archives to find things. We publish our own resources on Zenodo, so all of that is freely available to download. And we've now released a set of online courses, the first of which are going to be starting in a couple of weeks. So if you want to dive deeper in a cohort-based learning environment, do get in touch about those. So thanks very much to Katie Pratt, CSCCE's Communications Director, who I think has been dropping a lot of these URLs in the chat so that you're able to follow along and pick up with anything that you want to discuss in more detail. Thanks also to the Sloan Foundation for their continued funding of CSCCE, and thank you very much for listening. We're very happy to take any questions.
Great, thanks so much. We're just at the hour here, and so we're gonna share these videos afterwards. I'm gonna stop the recording now.